Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. With Hindus like Kshama Sawant, who needs enemies? Well, there's an interesting story that is developing in Seattle, and my guests today are going to talk all about it. First, let me introduce a first timer, Sandhya Dhanraj. I hope I got it right. I'm sorry, Sandhya Devaraj. I'm so sorry about that. Sandhya Devaraj, she's coming on our channel for the very first time. She's a resident of Seattle. She's going to explain what is going on. And also we have Nikunj Trivedi, president of Kona. So to both of you, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaste.
Hi, namaste.
So before I yield the floor to you, Sandhya, I want to just tell a few of the data facts about Kshama Sawant, the outgoing city council member of Seattle. Well, recently, about a year ago, I think, she survived a recall vote. The vote was so close, 50.38% against recalling her, 49.62% for recalling her. And she had committed 3 offenses, one of which I think she admitted to committing, and the other 2, I don't remember exactly what happened. Suffice to say, she survived. She is born in India. She was born in Punyanagari, born to HT and Vasundhara Ramanujam. Looking at her parents' name, I'm guessing that she's Tambram. So I'm like, my heart really aches, because I always think Tambrams are the ones who really know what Sanatana Dharma is about, but you have one of these odd variants once in a while. But anyway, so she has been very closely associated with, guess who? Pramila Jayapal. But they are different parties. So there is some, nuances there. All that is just for you to know about who Kshama Sawant is. I think her term is ending now. So Sandhya, take it away and walk us through what is happening now on this caste stuff.
Yeah, so I actually just learned about Kshama a few days ago, maybe like a week ago. So this whole caste debate seems to have crept up out of nowhere. I saw that she had a January 24th press conference announcing that she was going to attempt to ban caste discrimination in the city of Seattle. And she just kind of mucked up a lot of publicity of having people talk about how they believe caste is a danger to the city of Seattle. And it was all pretty comical. But I mean, after the comedy died down, I kind of felt a little nervous. And so proceeded to read up a little bit more about her and other caste movements in the US. And recently, with the help of Kona and some other Hindu groups, I put together a reflection piece about why I thought what she was doing was just so dangerous.
Thank you so much, Sandhya. And Nikunj, this is not the first time that we have been seeing this battle. First off, walk us through what happened on the first lawsuit that has been moving its way through the courts in California about CISCO, I should say, and then we can come back to this event, because I want our viewers to know. Some of you may not be aware, there have been a lot of caste-based stuff. See, if it was genuine, I would be all for it to say, okay, we should look at it. But the group that moves, it's one single individual, Tenmuri Soundararajan, Equality Labs. And guess who funds Equality Labs? IAMC, which is in turn funded by Muslim Brotherhood. I've done tons of videos on all this stuff. That's where the problem comes. Nikunj bhai, please walk us through what is happening overall on the caste-based thing. Is there any other things coming out from other places?
Yeah, no, it's been an interesting journey for the past, I would say, 2.5 years. I think summer of 2020, I think this whole thing got started, where CISCO was sued by the California Department of Civil Rights. It used to be called the Department of Fair Housing and Employment. It was a different name, CalDFEH versus California Department of Civil Rights now. And the alleged, sort of complaint against CISCO was that CISCO failed to check the discrimination, the caste-based discrimination that was going on in the company, where 2 Brahmin managers basically discriminated against a Dalit employee, things like that. 2.5 years later, there's not one single proof of it. Nothing has really gone through. On top of that, if you look at the declarations made by both the managers and stuff, you can see that there's a lot of basic faulty data and false allegations in there. And they have actually showcased how the Dalit employee was actually paid millions of dollars and was promoted, knowing his background as well. So, I don't want to obviously get into the details of the CISCO case, but whoever's interested can go to, there's a website that someone created called caste-gate.org, CASTEGATE.org, that lays out all the, holes in this case itself. So, that was CISCO. Then you started to have like caste policies debates in universities. So prior to this, in 2019, I believe Brandeis University was the first one to put together a policy around banning caste-based discrimination. Now, that was an outlier, obviously, because there were certain forces at Brandeis that helped pass this. But after the CISCO case, there was an avalanche of a lot of these policies that are being looked at. Even Apple, just out of nowhere, decided to include that as part of their anti-discrimination policy, which most people were not even aware of. There was no debate, nothing happened. So Apple kind of, in the pandemic, just kind of like, quietly introduced that. Now, from there, you had Cal State University, the entire Cal Poly, the California State University system. You had UC Davis, and then came Harvard's Graduate Student Association. You had many different universities, small universities, and then the final one was Brown University, adding caste to its anti-discrimination policy. Now, since UC Davis, Cal State, all of these have added it, there has not been one single reported case, at least not that I'm aware of. That's number one. Number two is, after 2.5 years of CISCO nonsense going on, nothing has been proven. And you can actually see a lot of holes in the case itself. So similarly, there have been all these based on, as you mentioned, based on faulty survey done by only one group, which is a known hate group, Equality Labs, right? So you have a group that is known to argue for dismantling of Hinduism, to call Holi a violent festival where men throw semen at women in balloons, some nasty stuff, right? And there's a lot more. But what they have done is, over the past 2.5 years, been the leading this charge. And other Dalit voices, including Dalit members who are part of Kona, their voices have been silenced. So so there's only one narrative that matters, and the media has taken that exact narrative, and over 100 articles you can see, from the Washington Post, the New York Times of the world, all the way to some small neighborhood articles and teaching materials, etc., have started to include all this information as fact. So a girl in Silicon Valley in the Bay Area had shown me her school textbook or a school lesson where they're actually talking about caste discrimination, and they actually bring up CISCO case. So the point is, CISCO is basically has been considered guilty until proven innocent, not the other way around. So that's where we are. And all of these things are piggybacking essentially on this. So the first thing, they accused Hindus. So they had, Hinduism is caste. You look at Dalits are supposed to be brown, dark skinned, while Brahmins are supposed to be light skinned. That was the argument in the CISCO case. Okay. So there was a heavy pushback from the Hindu community. So what Equality Lab started to do is sanitize all that information. They sanitized their website. They got rid of those anti-Hindu articles. They got rid of the posts that they had done on social media, etc. But obviously, internet just doesn't, disappear. So we have all that proof, number one. Number two is they also sanitized associations with Hinduism. So if you look at Cal State University, if you look at UC Davis, they clearly quoted the Rig Veda, misquoted rather. They also said that, there are 4 castes, this and that, all Hindu names. So then they started to see pushback from the Hindu community, and they started to panic or say, hey, this is not going to work. So they started to remove that. Then they slowly said Indian Americans, and then they finally said South Asians. They removed all the religions. They just kept South Asians. So they continue to sanitize. And the Seattle battle now is the latest of this iteration. And we'll talk more about the contents of it. But this is kind of the latest iteration, trying to see if a city like California, like Seattle, can actually pass a law around this. The problem with this is that for example, if you do this at a university, okay, you have the option of not attending the university. But imagine if you are not going to live in the city of Seattle. You can't just make that option, right? I can say, well, I'm not going to go to Cal State University system. I'm going to go to, I don't know, some university in Northeast or Midwest. But I can't just pick up my stuff and leave Seattle now all of a sudden. So there's a real danger here. And especially the big IT tech sector that sits in and around Seattle area is the main target of this thing.
Yes,
so
yes.
That's where we sit at this point.
Thank you so much. And I want to update a little bit more on what has been happening in our own county. I live in a county called Santa Clara County. Out of nowhere, there was a panel formed to look into making caste discrimination a mandatory thing for all the companies that were in the Santa Clara County. This is the who's who: Apple, Google, some part of Facebook, not all of it, then Netflix. Everybody was in this. So what has happened after that was when they had an open hearings, a lot of questions were raised, just like the way you said, Indo-American community woke up and asked some very difficult questions. Then they realized that this was a sham, that they didn't really know, they were out of their depth in terms of understanding what it was. So they dissolved that committee and kicked the can down the road. Now we have to look for and see whether this is going to come back again. I want to tell our viewers one thing. Listen, the skin color of people living in India, there are 534 shades of skin shades. In Caucasian countries, such as like the Western Europe, you have only 6. The reason for that is because it depends upon how much time you spend out in the sun. If you are a farmer, sure, clearly you're going to have dark skin. And there is nothing, I mean, there is no discrimination based on that. My own family, one of the family trees that we have, it goes back 400 years. It starts with 2 brothers. And it loosely, it's in Tamil, it says Karupanna, Sivapanna. That means like black brother and white brother. These are the eldest sons in the family. So, I mean, that is how people refer to each other. And this goes right through our family. There are some of us who are fair and some of us are very dark. It depends upon which chromosome mates with which chromosome. My point in trying to say all this is, India is one of the most inclusive societies. It has had this history for thousands of years. You don't need somebody who is misread. They don't know enough of this. They have been given some talking points, especially from my opinion, this IIMC bigots who want to just try to embarrass India. This is how I think the Equality Labs is functioning. They have also sanitized their site a lot, because we found out that one of the founders had a Pakistani background and so on and so forth. So all this is coming out now. My point in all this is, there's anything genuine about it, sure, we should address it. Also, Nikunj, I forgot to add one more thing. The UC professors, they are under a lot of pressure, and they have been complaining about this caste discrimination, because they can be sued saying that, oh, you gave me fewer points because you're discriminating against me. So this is a can of worms that people don't understand what exactly is going on. And they just said, okay, somebody seems to have a grievance, let's just address it, let's just pass a resolution. So it's all done in a hush-hush manner. This always comes up, sneaks up from nowhere. Now, question back to you, Sandhya. Kshama Sawant, why is this her last term? Why can't she run for office again?
Well, I have to make one quick correction. I'm actually a native of Santa Fe, so I live in Enchantment, New Mexico. I'm going to have to defer to Nikunj, but I understand that she's been a lot of baggage for her party and for the Seattle City Council. So, Nikunj, can you just clarify that? I know we quickly talked about it.
No, I agree with you. I think that the baggage is really, a problem for her. She's been very controversial. If you look at like some of the tweets that she has done, and then the responses to the tweets, right? Anywhere from corruption to like just being, a windbag, or so many things that you see on her, people responding. So there's a lot of angst. So I think but she's not done from a political career perspective. She's still going to be doing something else, right? It's like some of these people are career ideologues, so she's not going away. It's just she may not be running for Seattle City Council, but this is a parting gift. I look at it this way, like one last punch onto the face of the Hindu community. And this is the same CAA kind of playbook. If you look at the people who are supporting it, if you're the people who are behind, and that picture that you had, where the people behind it, her and stuff like that, they're all many of them are from that old CAA, resolutions and all that. So this whole anti-CAA nonsense is very much the same crowd that we're looking at. So she's just the ringleader of that crowd, essentially. So, but I think Sandhya's point is, think about it this way. I was born and raised in India. I came here when I was, very young. But someone like Sandhya, has a different perspective. Like, so I've seen parts of the, caste discrimination and things like that in India, and that's a social reality that we cannot escape. But when you look at the diaspora, when you look at, first generation born and raised American Hindus, how does that impact it? And that's why I think Sandhya would be really, really good in terms of giving her perspective there.
Over to you, Sandhya. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is something I've talked with Nikunj and Pushpita and Kona a lot about. So I was born in Maryland. I grew up on the East Coast, and I was really involved in Indian 𝙤𝙧𝙤𝙀 student life. For example, in college, I was even in Greek life, so an Indian sorority. So I've really socialized a lot with the second generation in this country. And I can honestly say, and again, speaking from my own experience, I cannot see how caste is relevant at all to our existence. It made no difference in who we socialized with, who we dated, who we married. And this is really something, and I think part of the reason why I'm waking up and paying attention now is because I'm just so blindsided by something that snuck up. And would you agree it's been the last year and a half, really? Maybe
Yes.
the last 2 years. Yeah, so I feel like I'm pretty in tune with the Indian American community, and I'm 32 now, so I'm well out of college, med school, residency, so I'm done with all of like my formal training. And through all of that, I mean, nobody brought up caste, and all of a sudden here I am, first job out of residency, and I hear the caste discussion popping up everywhere. Thankfully not here in New Mexico. It's a lot of the other Indians here, but that's where my whole question came up of, I recently wrote an American Kahani about how would this caste, how would kind of persecuting us based on caste, how would that play out at a policy level? Because I live in a part of the country where blood quantums are very important. How Indian or how Native American are you? You have to prove it to the government. You have to provide records of who your parents and grandparents are, what their native status was. And I mean, I don't think it's a far step to say that if this kind of legislation gets put into law, it might be a burden that we're going to have to start carrying, because how are we going to prove who we are? I have adopted members in my family, and I don't know what caste they were before they came to the United States, but probably not my family's Varna. And what caste does my cousin belong to now? So these are just some bizarre realities that I think we've never had to contend with, and there are going to be some pretty serious ramifications targeting us only Hindu Americans, if these kind of bills start getting passed.
Also, there's an unfortunate consequence of this that is going to happen. Already it is there in part, but it's going to increase. I'll give an example, viewers. You take Google, Apple, any of the FANG companies, right? If you look at the workforce, half of them, or perhaps even a little bit more than half of them, are all consultants. You know why they do that? It's first of all easy to fire them and easy to hire them. Second, they don't have to get all these benefits. The most important thing, most of these rules that they are trying to apply, like caste discrimination and all that stuff, will not apply to consultants. So if I were Google, what would I do? I would hire more consultants. So really, if there's a genuine recognition of somebody being oppressed and they need to be given job, if they are the ones that are going to be hired back as consultants, it's much easier to fire a consultant. I mean, it's just like at the end of the day, you will be walked out, or even during the day. So the thing is, you have to understand how companies can even implement. It's impossible to implement. First and second thing is, people come to United States because it rewards merit. It's a meritocracy-based society, and that is what has made this country of immigrants this country of immigrants so great. So why break that form? Why break that formula? I don't understand why people want to do that. Anyway, this is just my 2 cents. Also, Nikunj, I think one of the guys who was accused of caste discrimination was the one who found a job for the Dalit guy in his organization in CISCO.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Not only found a job, he actually promoted the guy. He gave them millions of dollars in like stock options and things like that. Now, I'm sorry, but like if you're getting millions of dollars, where's the oppression, right? In that sense, and knowing, in spite of the fact that that guy knew that you're from that same IIT batch and you're considered a scheduled caste or Dalit, whatever you want to say, and you're still giving you that, how does that person actually discriminate against you? So there's a lot of holes again. Now, but one of the things that is really disturbing about this this Seattle law or ordinance that they're trying to pass, Kshama Sawant has asked to appoint a special committee that will monitor South Asians. Now imagine appointing a special committee that's going to make sure that South Asians stay in line, right? By default, it's going to be Hindu Americans or Indian Americans, because we are the majority here. So now all of a sudden there is a monitor or a sort of a board committee that's going to monitor Hindus and make sure that they stay in line and there's no caste discrimination. That is a fundamental violation of our rights in this country. You know, civil rights, religious rights, whatever you want to say. All of a sudden you have, some are better than others and some are supposed to be more prone to caste discrimination than others are. So now all of a sudden you're saying, well, there's no religion in this law, but yes, let me put a special committee to monitor caste discrimination among South Asians. Now that's a danger, and essentially Seattle City Council is opening themselves up for some nasty fights. There's going to be some legal battles that they'll have to get involved in. There's going to be some nasty stuff going on if they pass this thing. So we're up for a pretty interesting battle there.
And also, I might add that the lumpens that surround Kshama Sawant and her like, I'm not saying Pramila is also part of this, but it is possible, is that when they find somebody stopping them and questioning them, they turn on that person in the most vindictive manner. If that person has a business, they try to blacklist that person's business. They try to cancel that person's operating license. This is the kind of depths to which they stoop to.
Yep.
I mean, I have first person anecdotal evidence of this happening in Seattle 2-3 years ago, when the first time they were trying to, I don't remember what it was regarding, but this has happened. And this is not just there. In Canada, a couple of Hindu Americans who started questioning, they actually lost their jobs. So, Nikunj, this point about trying to turn on somebody who's trying to oppose and reason with you is another very nasty surprise. I'm hoping that one of these people will sue them and make sure that they think twice before doing some sort of this personal vindictive level attitude.
Yeah, I mean, look, many of them are paid, essentially, right? This is what they do as a paid job. All of us are not doing this full time. We have
Absolutely.
other jobs going on. We're concerned about our careers, our family, things like that, right? I mean, Sandhya is probably looking at the clock and saying, I got to go, do something for my, medical stuff, right? She's not sitting there and plotting the next, caste resolution that she needs to pass in New Mexico. She's not doing that. That's not what she does. That's not her full-time job. And she's not like, some of these people are ideological extremists, right? Essentially, that's what I would like to call them, because that's what they do. And any reasoning that you want to do with them, they'll shut you down. They'll call you Hindutva, Hindu extremist. They'll plaster your face and your profile everywhere. They'll dox you. There's so many things that go on, and that's why a lot of people get very scared of these types of activists who are fighting apparently for diversity and inclusion. By the way, right? What kind of diversity and inclusion that excludes Hindus? I don't know, but this is the diversity and inclusion type of activists that we're talking about, and they're making millions of dollars by showing up in universities. I found out recently that at the United Nations, some of these activists, the ones you talked about earlier, apparently gave talks and training on diversity and inclusion. Imagine that. Now that's where you make the millions of dollars, and that's really what the operation is all about. Make millions of dollars, make Hindu Americans' lives hell. You're going to spend a lot of time and energy doing this stuff, and at the end of the day, things may happen, things may not happen. But hey, you know what? Let's make this thing as much noise as possible. So that's the concern that I have, personally speaking, but also people I've talked to, like you said, who are concerned about their jobs. They don't want to be, somebody can complain about them in their job. They can lose their business license, all those things, all on allegations, nothing that they have done wrong.
That's exactly right. All allegations. Yes. I mean, it's your right to protest, and it is somebody else's right to rebut you with facts. And you cannot take that and say, okay, I don't want this person, I want to report this person, that this person is indulging in something. So this kind of personal vendetta just shows you they don't really have a case, but they want to try and browbeat, or at least verbally try to, assault you, to try and make you to cow down and just say, okay, because Hindus for the longest period, and this is a fault of Hindus, I would say, that they've just ignored all these things. It used to happen all the time when I was growing up in India also. It's just, hey, this guy's a crackpot, just ignore him. That this ignoring attitude, I think, is now beginning to bite us back, and then we need to, stand up for the truth. Sandhya, if you would like to say something in conclusion, please feel free, and then we can wind up this program.
Yeah, no, so thank you so much for inviting me. I just really want to emphasize, as a second-gen Indian American, Hindu American, I mean, we are not unsympathetic to the fact that discrimination happens back in the subcontinent. I mean, but that's ultimately not our reality, right? We're born in this country, our futures, our careers are here. And I think that there's a lot of, we're a smarter group than I think maybe people have given us credit for. I think we recognize the parts of our history that we need to approach with sympathy and respect and compassion, but we also haven't brought a lot of those negative qualities into our new lives in America. I certainly haven't, my friends haven't, my siblings haven't. And I think making a lot of it, people don't know a lot about Hinduism. I mean, I remember back to middle school, pretty much the only thing they studied about my religion was that a caste system exists, and that we spent 3 days on what would you do if you were born as a Kshatriya? What would you do if you were born as a Shudra? So the fact caste and Hinduism are already very deeply tied in the American social consciousness. And so a lot of these groups, whatever they think they may be trying to achieve in terms of uplifting the oppressed, I think all they're really doing at the end of the day is putting a target on our back. And I've kind of written about it, how people don't acknowledge that Hindus are discriminated against simply because we are financially or professionally successful in this country. But I think a lot of groups like Equality Labs, or certainly Kshama Sawant, could apply the same compassion and humility that they preach that we embrace, and perhaps they could show us a bit of that. And so all I'm asking for is that our community is treated with the same respect and dignity that these same groups ask that we treat other communities with. So that's all I got to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sandhya. Nikunj, if you would like to have a last word before we wind up.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is going to be continuing. This is a continuing pattern. As Sandhya said, like the lived experiences of Hindu Americans here, Indian Americans here, is different than what may be back in the subcontinent. Most people have a bad understanding of Hinduism, as Sandhya mentioned. I've seen that across what we see in activism as well. There's Pew Research that talks about only 1 in like 4 or 3 Hindu Americans actually even know about a Hindu. Forget about knowing about Hinduism, but even knowing about a Hindu. So there are a lot of these things there's unconscious bias that would actually just come into it, right? And essentially, when you have unconscious bias coming to you, the decisions that you make are going to be dependent on that, no matter what it says in the law or ordinance. That's number one. What I would suggest is people need to wake up and actually do something about it. Because if you don't, it's going to continue, and it's going to have impact on our kids and our future generations, because these laws will be gone, right? But these laws will be around. And the ones that are born and raised here, the ones that are not connected to any of these things, are going to bear the brunt of it. And it's going to discourage them to own up their Hindu identity, number one, and also to become part and parcel of the American society, because all of a sudden now you are different, you're weird, you need special monitoring, you're so bad that a special law needs to be passed just for you, right? So this is the challenge that we face as a community, and we need to rise up and fight back on this thing in a peaceful way, no doubt about it, but in a strong and intellectual way that says we have rights in this country too. Some are equal than others. That doesn't work. We are as equal as anybody else that lives in this country, and we have contributed to the fabric of this country for many, many years, certainly since decades and decades, and we will continue to do so. So we deserve our rights. We will not be silenced, and we will stand up for what is right.
Thank you very much, Nikunj. Thank you very much, Sandhya. And viewers, we would like you to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. This is just the beginning, by the way. These are not going to be backing off, because there is a whole ecosystem that is being put in place. But we will be there to show you the truth, tell you the truth, and what is happening in and around the United States. Thank you once again. Namaskar.
Namaste. Thank you for having us.